Yeah, look at you.
Okay, so then it'll start with you, and then Brian, and then I'm gonna go in here to start it, and I'll do a screen share. So it'll start without your presentation.
Okay. All right.
Sure.
I'm just like, tell me where to go, Amy. It's like, there's all Brian's like, okay, sounds fine with me.
Okay.
So welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Anne Marie Bragg. I'm the Interim Director for the Office of Health Equity, and I am pleased to present Brian Dunbar, who is the Executive Director of the Institute for the Built Environment, and he's a Professor Emeritus at the Colorado State University. And through Brian's work, he's guided project work and facilitated design charrettes, is that how you pronounce that word? Charrettes, okay. For the National Park Service, the U.S. Forest Service, American Institute of Architects, cities, school districts, and then also the Colorado Governor's Energy Office. And since 2004, he's annually been selected as a lead faculty member by the U.S. Green Building Council. He's also the co-author of 147 tips on teaching sustainability, and his sustainable building teaching and research has been honored and recognized by the AIA, the USGBC Colorado chapter, the Colorado Governor, the Alliance for Sustainable Colorado, communities, businesses, and universities. And so he's going to be talking a little bit about the LENSES framework, which stands for Living Environments in Natural, Social, and Economic Systems. And one of the reasons why we're really excited to have Brian here today is because it really crosses health equity and environmental justice. I know those things are, they're different. At the root, they're really the same kind of things. And so this is exciting that it really crosses both. And it also, I just want to highlight that he doesn't use the terms necessarily, health, equity, environmental justice, but as you can tell from just his introduction, it's the same thing, right? We all have our legalese or our public healthies or environmental leads that we use. So we're excited to have Brian here. So please help me welcome him. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And you're right. The language is interchangeable, and what you're going to see and what you'll hear are things that I think you can relate to pretty easily. But please stop me, and if there's, Brian, do you mean this? Or actually, we say it this way. Is that different or the same? I'm open to questions. I'm really here to make sure I'm making connections for you, and I hope that I'm presenting something that could be useful to you and maybe even inspiring to you. That would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? So I'm from Colorado State University. We're your land-grant university for the state, and thanks to Abraham Lincoln, he's the one who established the land-grant university system. It means we should get out into our communities and really help make the transfer from what we're thinking on campus to the rest of the citizens of the state, and vice versa. If the citizens of the state have some critical issues, maybe we can be the think tank to help those happen. So here's a connection. I'm now one of the faces of the university. Please call on me as a representative of CSU if there are things that we can help you with. And maybe this is something that will connect with you in the first place. So Institute for the Built Environment, let me describe that a little bit. You can see what our mission is. We're an organization that's been put together for 20 years, and we're about healthy, thriving places. When I say built environment, it's not just buildings, it's sort of anything that's human formed from the natural environment. And so what is human formed from the natural environment? Well, sort of what isn't, like parks are, and roads are, and airports are, and cities are, and towns, and sidewalks, and the landscape that's created by us, as well as buildings, all different types of buildings. And so we're looking to develop healthy, thriving places, not just your sort of run-of-the-mill places, but really places that make us feel better. Oh, I was a little worried about this. So the lettering changed when we went to a different computer, so I have to apologize that I don't recognize that font, and it doesn't quite fit always. And I'll have to tell you a little bit more about what you're not reading. But anyway, our institute is made up of faculty from different disciplines that have something to do with the built environment. And we form teams that work on projects with students, faculty, and off-campus professionals. So for instance, we have students from interior design, landscape architecture, construction management, historic preservation, biology, natural resources, business. So students get to come and work with us as faculty on real projects that are mostly in Colorado, but you'll see some are in a few other places as well. So it's real nice hands-on experience for students. It's good research opportunities for faculty, and it's good connections with communities that we end up serving. So at the university, we think of ourselves as providing thought leadership. One of the things we have been known for is we're pretty good at bringing teams together and trying to optimize those teams for their results. So we really believe in collaboration. As you heard me talk about all those different disciplines, typically on a campus they can be segmented, like the ivory tower, like there's where they learn and that's where they learn. But we bring them all together and believe in this idea of project performance from the best teams. And then we're developing leaders through that work. So here's what some of the projects look like. I'm not going to take you into all of them, but we've done a lot of building projects, like the one up here. That's actually it's a beautiful looking building, right? You wouldn't guess that that's a military building. That's actually where the Army National Reserve in northern Colorado comes to be trained and then released to the field. It's a LEED Platinum project. It's the highest level of LEED, and it is a healthy building with healthy materials, and it uses low energy, and it's really a nice place that sort of helps the people who are coming there that have a little bit of nerves about, where am I going next, and it's a pretty calm place. It talks about the history. It gives them some pride about who they are serving, and then off to the release. So anyway, so to take a building that could be just a sort of a barracks building and really talk about health and culture and those kinds of things with the building. We're helping our mall in our town. They're dismantling it and rebuilding it, and so we're making sure that the waste is recycled as much as possible. So our students are accounting for where the waste goes, and hopefully not too much to the landfill. You're probably wondering why I have beer on here, but we do work with New Belgium Brewing that's based in Fort Collins, and they're really about sustainability and cultural connection with their city. And so, so we have done a lot to help them form their organizational sustainability work. So a couple schools that we've helped on. Here's Coors Field. We have, the last 3 years, created a garden. As you walk in the A entrance to Coors, we have helped the company Aramark, who does the work with all the food vendors. We're creating a lot of the food right there, and so it's a nice opportunity for learning for students as well. This is on our campus. I'll talk more about this cool project a little bit later. So you get a sense that we're doing a lot of different things, and again, a lot of it is in our state. But I'm going to focus your attention on a thing that we have created now for 8 years called lenses. And you can see that there are 3 different lenses here that you could look through, but we're really talking about an acronym for living environments. What's a living environment? I don't just mean your living room, and I don't just mean a place where you could lay your head down. I'm talking about a place that's full of life, a place that makes people feel full of life. And it helps. The place is naturally alive, it's socially alive, and it's economically alive. So that's really what we're talking about. And I'm going to give you a little bit of the sort of theory that goes into it, and I'll show you some examples of how we've used it or how you could use it. And so a little bit of background to it. there's some different mind thoughts that we've had in the creation of this. And I want to give credit to one of our former grad students, Stephanie. Stephanie was a biology undergraduate student. She went and worked in the field, and she did all the sort of data studies and field data. And she said, this isn't what I really wanted to do as a biologist. I wanted to sort of more help the environment, and I don't feel like I'm doing that. So she said, green building might be a way. Hey, there's a program in Colorado State where I could learn about green building. So she came she's a quiet, very thoughtful student. And Stephanie one day came into my office, and maybe a month into the program, she goes, green building isn't quite what I thought. And I said, well, what did you think? And then I realized she's a biologist. So she's like, I pictured these buildings being like more organic and alive and plants. And it's like, there are some of those buildings, and you're talking about sort of like the future. And there are some of these around the world, so I wanted you to take a couple months and do some research on the best green projects in the world and see what you find. And she found some pretty cool things. She's a good investigator. But it still wasn't quite, she found a system, and it's called the Living Building Challenge. And living buildings, that's more than a green building, it's a living building. So we looked at that, and we found some real good things out of that. But she wanted to push it a little further. And she convinced a lot of us as faculty members that there is something bigger out there than we were presently teaching or working on. And so, again, kudos to a student who came to us and helped create something that now 500 people have worked on our lenses framework. And it's changing the mindsets of not just us, but others that we touch. So thanks to Stephanie. And Stephanie long since graduated, but is still helping on some of the research work related to that. And some of the thoughts that go into it are, it's not just protecting nature. Sure, we want to do all we can. So EPA, that work is certainly, environmental protection is certainly really important. But maybe we can collaborate with nature if we really understand what nature needs and how can we contribute to nature, not just protect it. So it's so there's the first thought and sort of a changing mindset. The term survival of the fittest? Some people that we've been working with are challenging the meaning of that. It's not just about being fit. It's about fitting in. Like what the parts of nature that have fit in the best survive. So being of service, how do you fit into the world? What's your place? What's your contribution to the world? Maybe that's what survival of the fittest means. So again, a different way of thinking, but maybe this is on to something. So how can we make sure that we are a part of this larger system and we fit as human beings? And how do we contribute to a healthier place? And another thing that we have challenged, and I've been teaching the importance of sustainability for close to 20 years. And if you would listen to me, I have some good lectures about the importance of protecting our planet and the fact that there are a lot of facts about how our planet is being degraded, and we have climate change issues, and we have water quality issues. A lot of things that we know that I do not and cannot dispute. But something I've learned over time is that when I give the need for sustainability lectures, wow, it's not real empowering. It's sort of like some people will catch on and go, yeah, we got to do something to protect our planet, and others are like, oh, that's too big a deal. Those are too many problems here. So how can our message be different and maybe even more vital and more inspiring? How can it be a call to action for all of us. And if we believe that our planet needs to be healthier, then I think we need everybody's participation in that, not just some people that are carrying the flag for Greenpeace that say, hey, everybody, you're doing the wrong thing. Instead, like, well, how can we do the right thing? How can all of us, what is our place? What is our contribution? How can we be of service? So it changes the message from fear-based to vision-based. I'm not saying ignore the facts. I'm saying sort of change how we think about the facts, and let's do something positive as a contribution. For example, here's a place in the Bronx where a high school and a junior high school, thanks to a science teacher, are taking low-income children and teaching them how to grow things in parking lots and on the top of abandoned buildings, and creating a business and showing them how in that business to make money or what it means to lose money, and how you market your products and how you grow your products and what grows best in that climate and all those sorts of things. So high school and junior high school students are learning about something that might be more about abundance instead of scarcity. So how can we think more abundantly about our place, our planet? And that gets into this thought. You know those words, but we don't use them all the time. And I'm going to sort of change the words along the way, but I want to start with this. So degenerative. You know, like if your eyesight is becoming more degenerative. You also know when a limb is being regenerated. You also have heard about a forest being regenerated after a fire. So can we take those words and bring them more into the built environment? Degeneration and regeneration. And a simple diagram that we use to try to convey what we're talking about. Here's a sphere that's degenerative, here's a sphere that's regenerative. You can take yourself up the sphere and say that if we keep ourselves down here, we're doing degenerative kinds of things. In the built environment, buildings and places that don't contribute positively. So maybe they use too much energy, they waste water, they pollute water, they aren't accessible for humans, and so they create injury. Those are degenerative kinds of places. So there are codes that only allow us to be so degenerative. So if we follow the planning and zoning codes, then we're doing conventional work. Today's green building and sustainable development is better than that, but it isn't even quite sustainable. And so, and sustain though means to maintain. And if I would ask you, how is your marriage? And you said sustainable, I would say, sorry, like there's more to it than that, right? Like it could be better. And this was said to me by someone I respect a lot, a leader in green architecture, Bill McDonough. And I've heard him say it enough times that I've said, yeah, he's right. So if we can take that thought, like we can be more than sustainable, then there is more to life. And this is where we're encouraging people to start thinking about above sustainability into this idea of regeneration. Like I say, we know forests know how to regenerate. Can our places be regenerative? Can they be healthy and thriving places? And if so, maybe restoration is more a thought as well as regeneration. And later I'll just say, I'll use simpler words like harmful versus beneficial. And then I think it speaks more to everyone. So again, I'm going to take you into this thing we've created, but it's based on those thoughts. So like, can we get away from the fear thought? Can we think about more like life and thriving? And can we think about this new definition of survival of the fittest? How do we contribute? So I'm going to take you into what are our 3 different lenses. I'm not going to give you like the technology on how to work this. That could be for another day. It takes a while to learn kind of what the tool is, and I don't think you're here for that. I think you want to maybe see if there's something that we can bring to you that is useful to help you with your work or maybe with your personal life. Lenses, one thing we found that it does is it does build capacity. And it's about people. It's about bringing us together. It's about realizing everybody's value and worth and how can they contribute. And we really believe that as you put teams together and if you facilitate teams well, then you pull out the best in everyone and allow them to work together. Don't tell someone they have a bad idea. Think about why that might be a good idea and how does it fit into where you're going as a team. And it's not like there's one person that knows it all, but instead of our collective vision has a better understanding, and how can we use that to go forward? Not that there aren't bad ideas, but those bad ideas tend to set themselves out as people work together in a system over time. That's really what we have found as we've worked for 20 years in this way of thinking. So here's what they look like separate. So we have a foundation lens, what we call a flows lens, and a vitality lens. And if you look at the things within the flows lens, this is something we've hit on. And again, I give Stephanie some credit. Like, she asked the question, what brings a place to life? And for us in the built environment, we're prone to think about our building materials and how people circulate and the light and the electricity and the heat and the cooling. Well, actually, I'm starting to talk about flow. So there's flow of light, there's flow of people, there's flow of air, there's flow of water. So if you think about all the things that flow through a place, that's what brings it to life or not. And so how can the flow of transportation, of money, of water, of materials, and then some other things that are maybe more interesting to think about, like culture and education and energy and beauty. Flow of those kinds of things, if they are healthy and thriving and regenerative and beneficial, we're going to have a place that feels great and that really contributes to people and their well-being. And you'll notice that we leave a blank here. It's not just because we drew wrong or couldn't think of one more word. Instead, it's that we want to be humble enough to say, this group might have some other flows that they think are important that they want to bring into their project that they're working on. And so we do that both with the guiding principles, there's a blank, and the flows. And then we think about vitality in terms of what I've already shown you. How can we make sure that that place ends up being more regenerative than degenerative? So now you kind of see the background, and now how do you use those things? I'll get into that just a little, but I want to see if there's any questions yet. Anybody thoughts or questions? So far, it looks like you're with me. Every so often, I'm seeing some good heads nodding. Yeah.
Some questions. So I may have missed your introduction to the built environment. Does that include like urban planning?
Yeah.
Planning? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second question would be, when you looked at the regenerative, I think it was a previous slide, there's a diagram of degenerative, regenerative, I don't know.
Oh, I'm going to show it again, I think.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
so I think
one.
we're okay. Yeah.
So you said conventional practice. So
Yeah.
if we were working with, say, I don't know, traffic engineers and planners, do they know what the generative practices are, or they're not even there yet?
They're not there for the most part, but if we start to get more specific about like a new idea or something that has worked somewhere else that hasn't been tried here, that might be kind of how to help them think about it. Where convention would be, this is the way we've always done it, or this is what the code would have, or the laws would have us do. So that's kind of how.
There's a whole movement, I think statewide, and particularly in Denver, and the mayor and governor's budget proposal reflects that there's a culture around kind of biker and pedestrian safety.
Yeah.
But the infrastructure does not reflect that.
Uh-huh,
And so there's this tension.
yeah,
Hit and runs and all sorts of other like realistic kind of outcomes from that tension.
yeah.
And so, there's some groups have been working on it, will probably continue, but I think this really nicely kind of aligns with.
Yeah, when you speak to that kind of attention, so what we would do is we would take you back, how can the world be different, or how can this place, or how could that issue be different in a certain place? We would have you start with some guiding principles, like what do we really care about here? Well, we care about justice in that situation. Or we might say, well, we care a lot about safety. Okay, well then that's going to be one of our guiding principles. Or you might say, well, no, actually that's part of something else. And you can see we're thinking about it naturally, socially, and economically. So we try to have those thoughts. And then the next thing you're dealing with in terms of bike safety or pedestrian safety might have to do with flows. And so flow of transportation, when I break that out, and again, we might think naturally, socially, and economically about the flow of pedestrians. And then we're trying to think, how could it be healthy, regenerative, beneficial, instead of degenerative? What are those things? And then maybe somebody does some investigation and say, well, we saw in Austria the way that biking is handled there, and look how many 65-year-old females are biking in Austria. What is it that is different there? They're healthier, obviously, but they feel safe. And what is it? And so we bring a practice back. But we got to that because we set some good guiding principles. We investigated flow, and we thought about how to be regenerative. So that's kind of maybe a way to take it. Now, I'm not sure I answered your first question about the built environment. Okay. But the built environment really is anything that's human formed from the natural environment. So it includes hard stuff like furniture, but it includes cities as well and anything in between. Is there another question?
Yeah, I don't want to get too down in the weeds on this model, but
all right.
It's fascinating. And I like how you have moving up the chain from degenerative to regenerative.
Yeah.
And then I see the biggest circle that in the center of that one is economic, and then social natural.
Yeah.
Any reason why economic was at the center? Because I guess I would expect natural to be at the center.
Well, we hadn't thought about it from the center. That's an interesting point graphically. But because we called it lenses, living environments of natural, social, and economic system, I think that's part of how that happened. But when I think back on it, we call it the nested triple bottom line. Have you heard of the triple bottom line? So they're not always called natural, social, and economic. We use other words for them sometimes. People, prosperity, and planet sometimes. But anyway, if the natural is the biggest, so that's our planet. And then our social issues, we're part of the planet. An economic system is part of us. We created that economic system. It's not as big, actually, as this one. So I want you to sort of think about it that way, that the natural would be the biggest. But if you take it out this way and say justice to the center, actually there are these issues that are natural, social, and economic. Think about that way. So
thanks.
Yeah. All right, let me, so here's some more thoughts that relate to this idea of the degenerative and regenerative. Allow me to turn it on its side and think of it as a fulcrum now. So here is that bottom circle, and I'll call it harmful, and here is the beneficial part. Now, as we start to do things with our place, or even for an organization, some of those things are going to be more harmful, and some of those things are going to be more beneficial. We just want to have more beneficial. I don't want to be idealistic enough to tell you that everything we do is going to be of benefit. That's a nice goal, but I just don't know if we're always going to be there. I just don't want it to be this way. Like now that we know that we can be beneficial, how can more and more of the things we do be on the other side of sustainable? How can they be above sustainable? So think about the weighting that way, and can we get the weighting to go this way? So that's sort of a practical thing to present to you, that the more we can do that's beneficial, the better. And again, think about this organizationally. Think about this in terms of your life. Think about this in terms of projects or issues that you deal with in your career. And then we do have a system for how it's applied, for those of you that are wondering, like, how would I take this big idea? Well, we do it, typically we do it through workshops. We do some pre-work and background work and make sure we get the right people involved. And then we do a workshop or workshops. And some of that, remember I was talking about what a flow is, that flow is what brings us a place to life. I'll show you a diagram that relates to that. The foundation, those are setting out the guiding principles, and that nice group activity to say what's most important, what do we value the most, and then how do we think about our potential, what are some new ideas that we can bring to this that are healthy and thriving, and then there's implementation and managing that, and these can kind of go back and forth. We can continue to do more workshops as we evolve. So here's an example of an activity that you would do in the workshop or before a workshop, where you do an analysis of the flows. So here's some of the flows that I've mentioned, culture, materials, well-being, and so on. And think back to a place or an organization, and what were the flows like in the past? Just by setting the stage that way, you can think about, and what are they now? And then how could they be more beneficial in the future? So give yourself a little bit of lineage to think about how it can improve over time. So this is part of our process, is doing, for instance, a flows assessment. And we have a lot of different activities that we've built in that you could use during a workshop to help everybody sort of come to the same thoughts or come to common ground. Same thing with the guiding principles. Remember, we talked about some of those, like justice, there's health, there's spirit, here's the blank. You might, one of the exercises could be, what else do we value that's not on this list? And it's interesting to see groups come together on things that they might say, what's most important to you related to this issue? Well, to us, it's about environmental stewardship or social stewardship or something like that might come out as the most important value. Or maybe there's 5 things that are most important. Think about it that way. So anyway, I just wanted to show you that we have the process in mind about how to come to this idea of healthier, thriving places or issues or solutions, and some of that's through group activities. Now, a couple examples of projects that espouse what we have seen. Here's a place near the Bronx. And Majora Carter, someone that some of you may know of, she's one of my heroes. Majora has a legal background and also a development background. But she lived almost her whole life in the Bronx. And she was living back in the Bronx 15 years ago and walking her dog. And her dog, she kind of let her dog go one day, and her dog ended up over to this water area. And she's like, I've never even bothered looking in here. And went over piles of trash and said, there's actually a waterway. I've lived here 35 years. I didn't even know that this waterway was here. It was part of a river system, but it was so polluted, it was illegal dumping grounds. But it was behind everything. There was a lot of bushes and trees kind of hiding it. And Majora said, I want to live in a healthier place. This is in my neighborhood. I don't want this to be. So she thanks her dog for discovering this illegal dumping grounds, and she actually did something about it. It is now the first new park in the Bronx in over 50 years, and it's called Hunts Point Park. And it's a great place now for people to come together, for the community to come together. They did a lot of the work to do the cleanup themselves, but there were legal issues involved in it, and got a lot of people. And now she's gone off and she's created other positive developments like this one around the country, especially in New York. And then closer to home, here's one that we worked on. this building 10 years ago was now there's some beautiful block there, right? So we saw potential in it, but all the windows were out of the building. It was a storage building, and there was lawn equipment spilling all kinds of different oils and gases on the ground, and this was in a hidden area of a park in Cheyenne. But it was next to the Botanic Gardens. And a visionary person who lives in Cheyenne said, our Botanic Gardens aren't interesting enough to our children of our community. I want a children's place. And he said, do you suppose we could clean up that area next to the Botanic Gardens and turn it into a children's discovery center? It took a lot of work, but we didn't just sustain that place, we regenerated it. And so we made this a nice building. You know, we brought the history out of the building. We added solar, both solar for hot water, solar for electricity. It's a pretty windy place in Wyoming. Here's a vertical axis wind turbine that the children can come and see how many kilowatts are growing in the gardens here. There's all kinds of different plants, what grows best in Cheyenne. There's all kinds of demonstrations. There's a dog house in there with a green roof, a growing roof, and they look at what plants grow on that. Back in here is a secret garden that only kids can go. So I'm not sure what happens back there. Over here is a puppet theater. So there's like 35 different little places, and this is a small area, and yet it's really engaging. And it's generating life and new ideas for the children, not just for Cheyenne. I talked to a guy from Scottsbluff, Nebraska recently. He's like, you kidding? My kids want to go here every weekend. So they take the drive from Nebraska over to Cheyenne to see this place. So to me, this is the kind of thing we're talking about in the flesh, so to speak. And it's not just about a building. It's about all the flows here. And part of it's the flow of ideas, and part of it's the flow of the people. The other day I was there showing some other people this place, and an older couple walked in with their dog, a small dog. And of course the dog wanted to go to the dog house because it goes there every day. They said, our dog loves this place. We bring this dog here every day. Now it was created for children, and here's a retired couple that say, we come here every day, and partly because our dog loves this place. So it's a community place for Cheyenne, one that they're really proud of, and it's near enough to their downtown that so many people are able to really enjoy the place. So that's what I'm talking about when I say regeneration, health, thriving, places that you want to be, a place that brings others to life, socially, economically, and environmentally. And so when I talk about what you can do with this sort of thing, yeah, some of it is about the built environment, new and existing buildings and landscapes. Some of it's, we've used lenses just on a community engagement level. And we've used it to help organizations just think about their strategic planning. We're using it with the National Western Center right now. So because Colorado State has been part of the stock show for years, they invited Colorado State to be part of the new development of the National Western Stockyards and what's called the National Western Center. And so they asked our institute, could you come into some of our planning sessions, and we helped establish the guiding principles for what this development will be over its lifetime. And it wasn't difficult to talk to the city and to the master planners and others about the fact that there's a lot of degradation that has happened at the National Western or near the National Western. There's years of industry and spills and contamination, and probably speaking the language to some of you, you understand about how bad some of that is. So talking about regeneration made sense. Talking about sustainability, not so much. So when we started talking about the guiding principles, what's going to guide every project here? What's going to guide the master plan? What's the vision of the National Western over the years? Talking about regeneration made a lot of sense. So if you look at the guiding principles, you'll see regeneration is part of the guiding principles, but I think it speaks to so much within all the other guiding principles. There's a lot about culture and history in there, trying to make sure that the neighborhoods that are adjacent to the National Western Center, which are very culturally diverse and historic, making sure that those are emphasized and maybe regenerated so that there's more life in the adjacent neighborhoods as well. So just to close, just to say that we have created this thing. Thanks again to Stephanie, the student who had a different vision about what the world could be and how could she contribute to making it a better place. And that so many of us have grabbed onto and say, yeah, I think you're onto something here. And how can we? So we're going to continue to develop this. It's an open source framework. We want others to use it. We've created a nonprofit. The issues helped us create a nonprofit so that we can more quickly disseminate it. A woman in Melbourne, Australia, who is an architect, she just wrote a book called Designing for Hope, and she included lenses in her book and said, this is the framework that we would have you use to help create places that are of hope. So it's starting to get itself out there. There's a journal that just came out of London that said, yeah, look at lenses. This is one of those kinds of things. So I feel great about it. I'm sure Stephanie, the student, is like, oh my gosh, all I did was a thesis, and getting all this international acclaim. But it is something we really want people to use and benefit from, and we want to help you use it if there's a way. So we've created now a program of lenses facilitators. So we help others learn. We just had our first class of lenses facilitators, and it was an online class once a month. We had people in Austin, people in Boston, Philadelphia, New York, California, Costa Rica, Australia, who were part of our first, we call them lenses pilot facilitators. But we want others to learn how to use it, how to really take it so that they can use it in a lot of ways. And on the other hand, we're happy to help people by facilitating the process as well. So I think that's all I needed to say to open up the conversation for you, but I'd like to see if you have thoughts or questions that I could answer. Yeah.
Do you find that in the meetings, especially at the community level, the term regeneration means different things? And I'll give you some context.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm an urban renewal authority for my city.
Uh-huh.
And I've noticed that from a city perspective, the term regeneration would mean take an area of land, typically a 1950s failed strip plaza, 15, 20 acres, and regeneration would mean put in multifamily high-density housing, mixed use to renew the area, bring in a mix of age groups, and increase sales tax.
Uh-huh.
The surrounding community would say, no, regeneration is to go back, pre-development and give me a private park.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm just wondering how
Yeah.
you, and I use some of the talking points without using the Let's framework.
Uh-huh.
I wasn't aware of it. But I've noticed that at the community level, you're not going to get people on board who have a different vision.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have different lenses, and sometimes we do start out with that. Sometimes we don't use the word regeneration because it does take some explanation, and it can be confusing. Just like sustainability, everybody has a different definition for it. So sometimes we do keep it more of the harmful versus beneficial, but your point still stands. A city might say, well, it's been more beneficial economically to make sure that we're optimizing this site, where the neighbors might say, no, for us, we're thinking more environmentally. Well, we want to think we want to naturally, socially, and economically. And so this isn't necessarily easy. There's a lot of debate that goes on during the process of this, but we have found that people establish common ground, starting with those guiding principles. We can agree on those kinds of things. It starts to get to the built form sometimes. There still is controversy, but if we think naturally, socially, and economically, then at least if we're going to develop that into something that is going to have some economic benefit, let's make sure that it also has social benefit and natural benefit. And we have some good examples. There's a project in Vancouver Island, Washington, called Dockside Green. And it didn't use lenses, but it used a process similar to that. And it has taken what was a very polluted port and turned it into this place that the animals are coming back. people are there and they're healthier, and there's a lot of education and culture going on there. They've really cleaned up the environment. So it's like when you have those thoughts, and then if we can think triple bottom line, you can really think, are you helping nature? Are you helping the social condition? Are you helping the economic condition? How can we optimize all those? It can work, but there is those issues about how do we get to common ground. And I think this framework helps people come to common ground. Yeah?
Is another word for guiding principles values?
Yeah.
Kind of what those common maybe values are, because I think ultimately that's where, I mean, there's the economic value.
Yeah.
But making the most money you can and then offering people a social or natural, healthy environment can be competing, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. We do use the word values. Stephanie, when she first created this, she found 7 different authors were talking about guiding principles for sustainability to help define what sustainability was. And that's where we started with this. And so we stuck to that. But we found that we can use it well. Guiding principles sounds like, it's sort of still out there, like where are we all heading and can we come to agreement? So I do like to say we find common ground through focusing on those guiding principles and coming to agreement on what those are. We helped our city of Fort Collins with their new project that they want the citizens to learn from this project. They want to be at least net zero and climate neutral, but maybe even regenerative, maybe above the line. And we started them out using lenses and with guiding principles. We had 60 different employees of the city that were going to use this building, and we had the project team, and it was not easy, but by the time we came up with 8 guiding principles for the project, everybody signed, sort of like a charter. They signed it at the end of the workshop, like, we subscribe to this. And we gave everybody a copy. So now they have that on their desk. Before the building's built, they're like, this is what we're heading toward, and this is what guided us in our vision. So we've seen some real power in that, values or guiding principles.
So when you're working on a project, do you primarily facilitate the discussion, and is it primarily students that do that, or do you have professional people who do that? And then once you have this agreement, this charter, so to speak, then do you get involved in the actual building process? And I'm thinking, because I do regulatory stuff, do you check to see whether they're actually doing what they say they're going to be doing?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
Yeah, so we use the guiding principles and the flows assessment along the way. So there's checkpoints to make sure that those are still being used. Students are part of it to a point. Mostly the students are there to provide ideas, to provide some research, to document workshops, to help facilitate workshops. So we always engage students, but we have a staff that leads the project, our project managers, and then it depends on the project. Sometimes we're hands off, like you guys got this, take it, and other times they're like, no, we want you to keep helping us by facilitating or by providing ideas to us. And we have ideas related to both the built environment and organizational corporate work, organizational work. So we're helping, we helped New Belgium with their organizational framework so that they are always thinking about what's beneficial. And we're helping a private developer that does student housing projects around the country. And we've helped them establish their guiding principles. So it's not always just on a building, sometimes it's on an organizational level that we help that. And yes, we do that, sort of check it along the way if we continue to be involved. And that's one of the things we did with our pilot facilitators. We showed them how to continue to bring up the guiding principles and the flows to make sure you are thinking about regeneration from time to time along the status of the project.
And one last question.
Yeah.
Your fees. How do you build in your fees?
We're like an economic area on campus, and yet because we're a state institution, we can't take work from private industry unfairly. So we can't be unfair competition. So we charge the way private industry charges, and we have to make sure that everybody realizes there's an academic mission to the work that we're doing. And so we'll charge like a consultant does, very, very similar to that. So we check our fees and make sure we're in line with that. And we always do a proposal to say, here's our scope of work and here's what our hours are, so we're real transparent about. And now you could say, well, that's a little too high, what can we take out of here? So we do just like consulting would work. Yeah. And we do a lot of work by bringing in others to the team. We're pretty well connected with through our different projects, so we might bring a private consultant to be a partner with us on a project. Or an architect might hire us, or a school district might hire us. So there's a lot of different ways that contractually works out. Any other questions? Okay, if you want to contact me, here's my email address, and you can learn some more things about our institute by going there. I do have business cards and a handout about our organization. If you are interested in contacting us or working with us, I'm happy to share stuff with you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For coming. So there is a sign-in sheet if you could just sign it. And then for any of you, I know some people couldn't make it today, so we're going to post the whole presentation online so you can share it with your programs. Thank you.